Welcome to Puddlecast, where we discuss safety, water, environment, and career development topics. Let's jump in.
Hey, Max, it's great to have you back again.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
All right. Well, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about just how you got started in the safety world, how that came about. Yeah, by chance.
By chance.
I love these chance stories because it's like mine. It's like my dad gets off an airplane with a guy tells me I'm being stormwater. There I am.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
so I want to hear your chance story.
Wow, man, where do I even start? You know, I joined the military when I was 24 years old.
Thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah, man, served 21 years in the Air Force and loved every minute of it. You know, challenging times throughout the 21 years, but I wouldn't trade it in for the world.
Nice.
And about year 5, I had a chief, a mentor, talk to me, and he said, you know, you're not going to make a lot of money supplying hospitals and building hospitals for deployments.
Okay.
On the outside. And he said cross train. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, about a year later is when I started looking into it and the safety. He didn't tell me where to cross train. He just told me to cross train, find something else to do. And I had a friend of mine that was in the safety career field already in the Air Force. The Air Force and the Navy are the only 2 branches of the military that actually have a safety career path.
Interesting.
Where it's an actual job.
Okay.
In the other branches, it's farmed out to an officer or something like that. But So the retrain list came up, and my name was on the retrain list anyway. So it was almost forced anyway. And so, my career field was getting overstacked, and they needed certain rank in certain places. And so my name came up on this retrain list, and safety was on it. So I called a buddy of mine who was in the safety office. I said, tell me about the job. And he kind of broke it down and told me everything about it. And I said, you know what, I'm going to try it out. And I got picked up.
Interesting.
So by chance, I ended up as a ground safety professional in the Air Force.
So what does that look like? I mean, is that mostly equipment-based stuff? Is it stuff inside the I'm going to say bad things because I don't know, but like the barracks or the facilities, what does that entail?
All things, you name it, it fell under that category.
Okay.
And I mean that. It's basically you're an occupational safety and health guy that covers everything.
Okay.
From policy and procedure to operations to investigations to even in the Air Force, what's different on the outside world is we investigated on duty or off duty injuries and mishaps that happened.
Okay.
So in the Air Force, you hear the term mishap in the Air Force versus accident.
Okay.
And so, but we manage those. So if 4th of July weekend and somebody gets injured in the mountains while skiing, if it's assigned to our base or our unit, we have to go investigate those as well. So
Interesting.
I had a broad scope of everything general industry, construction, investigations, even a bit. I sat on some aircraft investigation boards, some FAA type stuff, which is in the Air Force. So, yeah, I kind of got a glimpse of it all. But the focus was ground safety is what it was called in the Air Force.
Okay.
And that's, you know, going out doing audits and inspections and training and you name it. So that's how it started.
Okay.
Very young, went to school in Lackland Air Force Base. It was a 6.5-week school or so of teaching you how to be a safety professional in the Air Force.
Okay.
And, man, some of the best training truly that a safety professional could get is in the Air Force.
Well, I'm sure. And they've got probably pretty regimented things that 100%. you're following through
required.
On.
Yeah. One of the biggest differences, I mean, everything is written, right?
Yes.
It's structured and there's a standard and a regulation for everything in the government, in the military in general. And so there was specific processes and procedures that had to be followed.
Gotcha.
By everybody. But there was also an accepted risk piece that you had to manage. And so, yeah, but that's where I got my feet
So you there were plans and there were policies created and you were managing the implementation of those.
Correct.
Depending upon what they were doing.
Correct.
But I'm guessing that when you went into the private side, that changed a little bit because you were more on the yes, there may be something written, but is it written in the right way based on the regulations that are being asked of us? And you're having to get more on the plan writing and the programmatic side of it.
I think that was one of the biggest challenges when I retired and went into the private sector doing the same job.
Okay.
Because you expect, I mean, for 21 years, I've been looking at these books and regulations that tell me exactly how to do my job, but also tell other people exactly how to do their job. And I think the challenge on the private sector is that that's rare.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's rare to be as structured as that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people have processes and procedures and policy, but it's rare to be structured. So, you know, I had to adjust a bit because I was very regimented. You know, hey, we're going to build it this way and this way. And
you had a chain of command and you knew how to get
100%.
a message in the field to somebody that could make a decision about it and move 100%. It on. And then you got onto the private side and you're, hey.
Right. And you know, what's interesting on the private side. So when I retired, I retired and I'd been in the profession for a while, which it helped me, you know, tremendously to get a job in the outside doing what I was doing. But I came into a company as the safety director. Mm-hmm. And so there was no report, you know, the CEO is who I reported to. And he just said, go do it. Well, so, and which was fine with me, but it is trying to take off this hat of you're not dealing with airmen and folks that have to follow exactly what you say.
Yep.
The private sector is a bit different in their way. So that created a challenge.
Sure, you bet. And I bet there's also a little bit of a challenge in that when you get into the private side, not only may you may be doing things that were different in your experience that was on the base, but you also have different sets of rules depending upon where the business operates.
Yeah.
Certain state regulations are going to be different. They all are sort of focused at this area, but how you comply changes. How you comply in the Air Force is the commanders involved. There's a chain of command that's involved, and it's OSHA, for example, can only come onto a base to deal with contractors. Okay.
So if there's a contract working on base, OSHA can come on, and if they see something, OSHA's the government. They can, but they didn't have that type of jurisdiction on a base.
Okay.
We were governed by our chain of command. Mm-hmm. Now we followed OSHA guidelines and regulations, but it was governed different. So then getting out, and then that reporting body and all of those different things that I had to get used to, it created a challenge briefly, but I mean, you quickly understand what you need to do.
And then, so then translate that to the private side. And now OSHA is the governing body.
Correct. Yeah.
And you have an operation, let's just say you have one here in Washington, and then you have one in California, and then you have one in Texas. How does OSHA regulations, do they set sort of the foundation by which states then influence policy, or how do the OSHA regulations change based on geography?
Well, OSHA is the federal standard. And now there's some states, I believe there's 7 states that have state-run programs similar to Oregon.
Okay.
Washington have state-run programs. And all of that means is that the states that have those state-run programs can say, you know what, we follow everything that OSHA has set forth, but we're going to make this more strict.
Equal or more stringent then?
Equal or more stringent. And so it's states that say, you know what, I like this, but I want to see this company or this industry do this and manage these processes a little different than or a little more strict and stringent.
And is all the permitting or all the regulatory enforcement done by the state specific?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's done by the state unless federal needs to get involved.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Very similar to NPDS. It's the same as stormwater.
Yep. And we're seeing that right now as, and this is your lane, we're seeing that right now as these permitting, this notice of intent and permitting process for stormwater has begun to filter down to the states.
Yep.
I think it was 2021 in the state of Idaho is where I am. It finally got to the state, and they're still trying to figure out what the heck do I do with that.
Yeah.
But So you're seeing a little bit of that in the EPA world as well, and allowing the local Department of Environmental Quality kind of manage those things versus the federal EPA.
Yeah, yeah. So if I'm a corporation and I'm growing and I'm expanding and I'm thinking about, okay, I'm going to go into this other state, or I would imagine that you have to think about what you're doing as a business practice. If I've been a manufacturer for my business industry, that's my business life. I make widgets and I sell those things. But I'm doing so well that I'm growing, and I'm going to now operate my own fleet trucks.
Sure.
And I'm going to have shipping and unloading. I'm going to add this new SIC code or NAICS code to what I do as an operation. I bet you that brings in a whole new set of safety considerations that I've never thought of before.
It does, and and truly, before I retired, I mean, we ran off of SIC and NAICS codes as well, but it wasn't. We had our standard that we had to follow. So
gotcha.
When I got out is when I started really discovering, and that was 2018 when I retired, and I started really diving into industry codes and what they really meant.
Mm-hmm.
So companies are having to adapt to that. So if a company's growing, what's important, and a lot of those industry codes are really more insurance based.
Okay.
And it helps insurance companies determine what category to put a company in based on potential risk.
Yep.
So from a safety standpoint, yes, it's important to understand and to highlight, but it's not our main focus. Okay. Now, as a company, it does help them understand, hey, are we in the right code?
Yeah.
And are we doing the things to follow the guidance and responsibilities underneath that code?
Okay.
Yeah.
If
that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think when these companies are looking at somebody to take this over or to dedicate somebody as that person, it generally falls under environmental health and safety as an umbrella.
Always.
Right?
Yeah.
That's an awful lot to ask an individual to understand, not only just all the safety policy,
sure,
but then to go over here and understand this NPDES or permitting policy. And understand, and these things are constant. In my world, permits last for 5 years, and the rules last for 5 years, and then they get revised. Talk to me about a person who's now been given this title that has to manage their system.
Run.
With all, yeah.
But to some degree, and this is where I would encourage leaders and safety leaders to stay in your lane. Okay. And what I mean by that is it's difficult if a CEO tells me I got to do it, I mean, I got to do a job. But we also have to be able to confidently say with no pride to a CEO is that's not my profession.
I don't know that yet.
There is and I ran into this to some degree because I was thrusted into not only the occupational safety and health realm, but the environmental.
Yeah.
Fleet. I ran the fleet program for a company, which I loved it because it allowed me to learn. But there needs to be specialties.
Yes.
I could manage everything or direct everything, but there needs to be specialties within that. So if I had something to say to a company that was growing and some of these things started introducing themselves to their operations and their environment, I would say focus on each one as separate entities.
Yep.
Maybe you have an overarching manager of these or director of these, but there's a stormwater specialist that needs to be in place.
Yeah. And I've just been doing this for so long. I always say this: if it takes a village to raise a family, it takes a team of people to manage a stormwater project.
It does.
And I've been doing this for forever, but I need a team of people because I'll go onto a job site and I'll see something that I've never seen before, and I need those resources to be able to provide me guidance.
100%.
And to your point, I think it's so important that these folks that have both the safety and environmental umbrella to know what their lane is, to know what they know, and know what they don't know.
100%.
And for those places that they don't know, that they get access to a team of people that they don't have to have them necessarily there all the time, but they need to know where to go to get a question answered.
That's a fact. And truly that's what you provide as well. I mean, I think we look at, companies, it's difficult for a company to build a safety team
Yes.
financially.
Right. Because we're all out there making money for that company.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We are the support that makes no money. Matter of fact, we probably cost money.
That's right.
Initially.
Yes.
I think I can make an argument that we save money, more money than we spend in the long term.
Try to make that argument every time we go in through the door, buddy.
So, but I do agree with you, and I think it's important for people to stay in their lane and be experts at what they are an expert at.
Yes.
And then get help.
Yep.
You know, one of the biggest things we hear about are country leaders. Let's just say that. They might not know how to do it all, but they get people in places that do. And I think companies need to be aware of that, whether that's hiring somebody internally, whether that's using a consulting service, whether that's whatever that is. But the EHS umbrella is a very big umbrella.
Yeah.
And typically the person that you put in the EHS umbrella only deals with one of those.
Yes. And it's so important to build the redundancy, right? Because if you're the only person that knows and you want to go on vacation, company's exposed every time you're gone.
What do you do?
Right.
Right.
So building that redundancy and trying to build maybe not necessarily leadership, but at least support of that program internally is crucial. And to me, that's about training.
It is. It's about training, but it's also, we talk about empowering employees. You can take internal employees that do a job. Let's say you have 4 sections in a work center. You have one safety director, maybe a safety coordinator that's with them. There should be in each section an employee that acts as the safety person for that.
They're the
task.
representative.
They are the representative for that group. And then you're empowering employees to do something different. And maybe you take an employee that's not normally a supervisor or not normally a lead, but is an expert at welding.
Yep.
Well, let's make him the hot work guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We know a guy that has had emergency management experience in the past. Maybe you make him the spill cleanup guy.
Yeah. All right.
And then you task these guys that then help and support your safety team that, for whatever reasons that we can't grow.
And I think that also gives that individual, it helps build that purpose.
Oh,
it helps build value in that individual that I'm the team lead for this. People are counting on me.
I'm not just a welder.
I'm just not. Yeah, exactly.
Right. I'm not just a shop
I'm part
guy.
of this team.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I think companies can manage that in a way where they're not saying, well, I can't afford to have 6 people on a safety staff, but you got 600 employees that you can train and make safety people out of them. Mm-hmm. Right. And they're more of a liaison between the shop and the safety office. And then you have, and there's just opens up this communication.
Well, isn't that crucial? Like the communication, and having that be part of the culture is that if you see it, say it.
Well, that's where
it's
fail.
Not, it's not, you're not a tattletale. You're not a narc. It's about being able to go to our job, feel that we're safe and secure in doing that job, and come home at the end of the day feeling like we've been successful.
That is, man, you hit it on the head, man. The problem is that when you don't have an established safety culture, or your leadership is not in tune with everybody, all employees, then you have a misrepresentation of what your responsibilities are. And I say this because if an employee doesn't feel like they can say, hey, man, this is going to kill me, then we have failed at the top.
Yeah.
That's flat out. Because that means that employee thinks that I could get in trouble or, I might not get a raise or I might not get this bonus or
I have to put myself at risk at all costs.
And so we have failed. If that's even a thought, in my opinion, we have failed from a leadership perspective. That's why I always talk about culture versus compliance. And, and some agree with me, some may not. But in my opinion, I would worry less about compliance. I mean, if you come and find me $10,000, I know but if my culture is great, eventually we're going to clean that up.
Yep.
But if you never have great culture of safety and systems and processes and management and leadership involvement and all of these different things, if you never have that in place, there is no way that you're ever going to sustain compliance.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, your experience and your ability to come from the military to the private sector and doing what you're doing, which is going around the country now and talking to different people and getting involved with their programs and figuring out how to build that culture. I bet you've learned just a lot of things and you've seen a lot of different.
Oh man, I've seen it. I've seen it, a lot of it, even from the insurance world. I've seen it from being a director. I've seen it from understanding how to investigate. I've seen it.
Yeah.
How we manage claims within. I mean, there's so many different avenues in the safety world. I got my feet wet with environmental.
Yep.
And I'm not afraid to say I'm not an expert in environmental. That's not my field.
Right.
But I know enough to look for resources to help me.
Yeah.
And I think that's where if I had to say anything to a company that may be listening or even a safety director or CEO that may be listening is don't be afraid to seek resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
I mean, I'm not afraid to say I don't know it.
Yeah.
And I think most safety folks are like that. Most consultant and safety folks in this arena, we can't act like we know it all. Because if we say one thing that's wrong, that could cost the company.
Right.
So you just got to be, you got to be willing to, hey man, this is my lane and I'm going to stick to it, but I can help you. I can find what you need. So
right on. Well, Max, if people need you, if they need you to come out and help with that process, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, easy. No, my company is Impact Safety Consulting. You can reach me by email. It's maxwellbt@impact-safety.com. Feel free to reach out.
Right on. Well, thanks for being here, Max. Thanks for being part of the Puddle Cast.
Appreciate it.
And we'll catch you next time, everybody.
All right.
Thank you to today's special guest. Join us again on the next Puddlecast.